A year has passed since the release of the a7 IV, and you want to know whether or not the a7 IV is worth getting, or if it'd be better to save the extra cash and just go with the a7 III. Well, I'll try to help you with that decision, as there are a few things to really think about. I've had the a7 III for 2.5 years or so, and the a7 IV for around 9 months. And as for a disclaimer, this is not a review video about the cameras. I'm only going through the functions and portions of the camera that I actually use for the type of photography work I do, as well as the video work that I do. Your needs may be different than mine, and that's perfectly normal. This simply will be my opinion on which camera would be the best based on what I do, and why, if I were in your shoes, I'd make a certain decision. Now, there's something you need to know right off the bat. More megapixels does not mean a cleaner image or a better image. For me, I think of megapixels as a double-edged sword. The positive is the ability to crop into your image without losing a significant amount of quality. This can come in handy when you take a picture and maybe you're a bit too far, or maybe you just want to get rid of anything that might take your attention away from your subject. You can crop into the image and have a clear focus on what is going on in the picture. The negative quality is the file size. When you take a bunch of pictures with a high megapixel camera, the files will really start to add up and weigh on your hard drive or SD card, and you'll be out of space very quickly, especially if you take burst photos. Though a quick thing to note, the Sony a7 IV actually had an update last year letting you change file sizes between large, medium, and small. Large being the regular standard 33 megapixel for the camera, medium being 14 megapixels, and small being 8 megapixels. I personally only use the L format as I really want to have the ability to crop if necessary, but it's nice to have options to choose from. Personally, I think the ergonomics of the a7 IV trumps the a7 III. I like the bigger grip and the feel of the camera in my hands compared to the a7 III. It's definitely a personal preference, but it's such a big difference maker for me. The only thing about the a7 III's grip that I like more is that it's more comfortable to shoot with one hand compared to the a7 IV. With this method, I'm able to be more stealthy, which would be helpful in situations where I don't want to attract attention for certain shots. The a7 IV has a flip screen, while the a7 III has a tilt screen. For photography, I actually like the flipping screen more at first, since I thought it'd be more useful to get those low angled shots, which it was. But as time passed, I actually noticed I preferred the tilt screen. The whole process of flipping out the flip screen then flipping it back towards me is just a bit annoying compared to the a7 III, where I can just flip the tilt screen. I would say overall, the flip screen is probably something more convenient to have, but definitely not something that's a must-have. There are positives and negatives from both sides. For video, however, it is a completely different story. The flip screen is way more valuable in my opinion. You'll be able to see what you're actually recording from various angles and heights that simply would be more difficult or practically impossible if you had only a tilt screen. I don't know about any of the specific numbers or so, I don't really care about that type of stuff, but from my experience, the autofocus of the a7 IV has seen a good improvement over the a7 III. I've been able to focus on certain subjects in low light when doing street photography at night, and it locks on focus quite easily. Whereas with the a7 III, there have been times in low light where it just wouldn't focus, and that can be a bit annoying. The face detecting with the ability to focus on either one of the subject's eyes is also very handy to have. And if you're into animal photography, the a7 IV also has bird eye autofocus. I get photos of birds on the street every now and then when I see them, but it's not something I mainly do. The a7 III is no joke though. The focusing was great in 2018 when the camera first came out, and it's still good now. You definitely won't be disappointed with its autofocusing capabilities. With the a7 III, you're able to record the memory of your favorite settings into these 2 recall dials, which lets you save up to 2 of your favorite custom settings for quick access for both video and photos. With the a7 IV, since the camera separates the photo mode, video mode, and SEQ modes, and there are 3 recall settings, you can actually record up to 9 settings, 3 settings for each mode. And this is one of my favorite changes for the a7 IV. For photography, it isn't really a big deal as I mainly only use aperture priority or manual mode. But for video, it allows for quick, easy switches between certain settings, such as when I want to change frame rates from 24 FPS to 60 FPS. This really isn't a big deal, honestly, but there really is a difference between the a7 IV buttons, joystick, and knobs compared to the a7 III. The a7 IV buttons are much more pushy and clicky compared to the a7 III, and I personally like it that way. With the a7 III, there would be times where I might push a button, and I'm actually not sure if it registered or not. With how clicky the buttons are on the a7 IV, I know 100% whether or not a button has been pressed or not. As for the dials, the ones on the a7 IV feel more rigid and sturdy. The a7 IV can shoot 4K 24 FPS, 30 FPS, and 60 FPS, with the catch being the 60 FPS having a 1.5 crop. The a7 III doesn't actually have the ability to do 4K 60. Both cameras can shoot in 120 FPS as well, but only in 1080p. Along with that, the A7 IV has 10-bit 422, which gives you more room to grade your footage, while the A7 III only has 8-bit 420. Because the A7 III doesn't have 10-bit, most choose to shoot in the HLG picture profile, and that's totally fine. But for me, I much prefer the workflow with S-Log3, which performs much better on the A7 IV. So for me, that is quite a big deal. You can still get great footage from the A7 III as proven by all the great work that's been filmed on that camera from others, but the upgrades the A7 IV has made for video compared to the A7 III is very important to factor in when making a decision between the cameras. All newer Sony cameras have gyro metadata built into them, so the A7 III does not have this metadata in the footage it records, while the A7 IV does. Gyro metadata allows you to import the data into Sony's Catalyst Browse program, which then lets you stabilize your footage even without a device, such as a gimbal or so. Gyro stabilization works very well too, with the trade-off being your footage gets cropped. But it definitely is worth it, especially if your footage needs to be stabilized and you don't have a gimbal. But if you do have a gimbal, you'd be able to stabilize your footage even more, which I find a much better solution than the built-in stabilizers from editing programs such as Final Cut Pro, which is what I use. To put everything together, I do find myself enjoying the A7 IV more. I like the changes they made with the camera, from the small things like the buttons being pushy, or the big changes like the video aspects of the camera, or the dials being able to choose between the photo, video, and S&Q mode with a simple twist of a knob. Now for the reason why you probably clicked on the video, who are the cameras for? Personally, I think the upgrades they have made to the camera justifies the price increase. From the price point of a brand new A7 III at this point in time at $2,000, you are essentially paying $500 more or so for the A7 IV. The brand new features as well as the changes they have made to the camera is definitely worth it to me. But it definitely depends on your needs and what you want to do. If you are mainly a photographer with no interest in video whatsoever, I'd recommend the A7 III actually. There are upgraded features for photographers that fix some of the minor inconveniences that I've experienced on the A7 III. But it's nothing crazy to the point where you need to upgrade to an A7 IV. Instead, you can take the $500, or even more honestly, if you buy a used A7 III, and with the people wanting to upgrade, you can definitely find some for a really good price. But yeah, you can take that money you save with the A7 III and spend that on other important things like lenses, tripods, life, travel, and so on. If you're a videographer or a hybrid shooter, then I would actually recommend the A7 IV. The 10-bit 422 along with the flip screen just makes life way easier for the video side of shooting. The photography aspect was already good with the A7 III, and that has been further improved with the new features they've added to the camera. Now what if you already have the A7 III and you're looking to upgrade to the A7 IV? Well, it's really the same discussion. In my mind, it just really comes down to if you want or need the video aspects of the A7 IV. If you have no interest in video whatsoever, it really isn't worth to upgrade in my opinion. But if you're a hybrid shooter or a videographer, then you should definitely take a look into the A7 IV. That's all from me this week. If you found the video helpful, please like and subscribe. I'll see y'all next week. I'm gonna go shoot. Later.